So tonight for dinner, I'm going to make tacos. As a matter of fact, I'm going to make shrimp tacos with arroz a la mexicana, and we're going to eat some salsa with them. And so you've seen the recipe for arroz, you've seen the recipe for salsa, and now I want to show you how to make some really yummy corn tortillas to make your tacos with. Now, it's very difficult in Belgium to find corn tortillas, but it's a little bit easier to find something called harina. And harina is really just ground corn. Well, harina de maiz is ground corn. And all that you need to make tortillas is harina de maiz, which you can find at all sorts of different international stores, and some warm water. It's very important that the water be warm. Now here's something that's a little bit tricky. I don't measure when I make tortillas. I do it by feeling the dough and making sure that it's wet enough for me to be done. But today I will try to measure for you so that you've got some measurements to use. Now I haven't opened this bag of harina yet, so I'm going to go ahead and open the bag. And I'm going to use my scale here to see how much I'm pouring in so that you guys have a small recipe. All right? So let's put the scale on. And let's see how much I decide to use today. I usually make 20 or 25 tortillas at once. All right, let's see. How much do I want? Let's use, because it's a nice even number, let's use 300 grams of masa harina. There we are. So I've got 300 grams of my corn flour here. Now all I'm going to do is add water until I have a dough that's not too dry. It's very important that it be wet, but not very, very sticky. So usually it's about what we say 1 to 1, which means if I use 300 grams or say 2 cups of masa harina, then I will use about 2 cups of water. But like I said, I never measure. So I have here in my container just under a half a liter. Let me put all the way up to a half liter of water in here, and then maybe I can give you a measurement, huh? Okay. In my measuring container, I now have a half liter of warm water. So I'm going to start by pouring quite a bit of water in. I just poured in about 100 milliliters of water. This is still going to be way too dry. I'm just using a spoon. I will use my hands, so you want to make sure that your hands are nice and clean. I'm just using the spoon so that I can judge how much water I still need to add. Added a lot more water that time. I'll give you a measurement in just a second. But our flour, our harina, is soaking up the water very, very nicely. It still looks like it's probably a little bit too dry. So we're going to add a little bit more water, and then it's time to switch to our hands. Yeah, it's definitely still a little bit too dry, so let's add a little more water. And now we'll go a little bit more with the spoon, and then it's time to start with my hands. It's starting to feel very, very good, though. All right. Now, we're not kneading this dough like we might with a bread dough. We're trying to see if it's going to push together and if it's going to stay together. I still think it's probably a little bit too dry. And the reason I know that is because I can see dry bits in my dough still. And we don't want that, because when we want to make the tortilla, the dough has to be able to stay together and not crumble up. So we're going to add some more water. Water, 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 but not too much at a time. I maybe only added a tablespoon or 2 that time. I'm going to switch to one hand, just because it's hard to get my hands into the bowl here. And you know that it's done when all the water is off the bottom of your bowl, and it's going to look a little bit like mashed potatoes, actually. But it should be able to stay together really, really easily. You know what? I'm going to add just a touch more water. Just a little bit. because when I can see it cracking on the edges like that, I actually don't want that either, because what's going to happen, of course, if you've ever seen a tortilla, we're going to smoosh them into very thin circles. And if the dough is not wet enough, it'll just break instead of staying in its pancake shape, which we don't want. All right, that is looking pretty good. So now what we have to do is we have to let this rest for about 10 minutes. All right, so our masa has sat for its 10 minutes, and there are two different ways to get really nice round-shaped tortillas. One of them is to use something called a tortilla press. Not everybody has a tortilla press, so I'm going to be showing you how to do it without one of these. But normally you put 2 pieces of baking paper, one here and one here. I have my 2 pieces of baking paper here. And you would put a bit of dough in the center, put the top over the dough, and use this lever to push down until the tortilla is nice and flat like paper. Now, because not a lot of people can find these in Belgium, we also can use the very technical frying pan and rolling pin. So I'm going to set the frying pan aside, and I've got my 2 pieces of cooking paper here, right? I'm going to use a ball of dough that's about the size of a small golf ball, maybe. It doesn't need to be too big at all, about like this. And we don't need to do anything with it. We just need to put it in the middle of our cooking paper, put our other piece on top like a sandwich, and press down just a little bit. Now, we're using this frying pan because we want to make a nice circle, and the frying pan will give us even pressure around the ball of dough. So we're going to take our frying pan in 2 hands like this, and you're just going to press down. You can use as much strength as you can because you won't flatten it too much doing this. We're still going to have to use the rolling pin. But you press, 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 press. Don't twist, just press down. Now, that was all my strength, and this is too thick. I can already tell. I'll show you what I mean. Too thick. Needs to be kind of paper thin. So, we use our rolling pin to finish. And we just try to go all the way across the dough and flatten, flatten, flatten. It will kind of curl up like this, and that's okay. But you want it to be even. You don't want to have a thick tortilla side and a thin tortilla side. So try to keep that circle shape. And you can feel it with your hands if it's too thick or too thin. Once you've made a lot of these like I have, it's easier to tell when it's too thick and when it's too thin on one side or whatever. That's okay. So now, let's see how thin we have it. If we look here, that is looking pretty good. It's still a little bit on the thick side, but this would make a great taco. I'm going to make it just a little thinner because I'm picky. There. A little bit thinner. Now, it won't be quite the perfect circle, but that's okay, because all it's got to do is hold taco stuff. Now it's time to cook our hand-formed tortilla. So, we take it off very carefully off the paper, and we put it in our very hot pan. This pan has been preheated to medium-high heat, so it's very, very hot. It's only going to take maybe 30 seconds each side, and the way you're going to tell that things are done is a lot by smell and a lot by looking. Things I can't show you on the video. So you can, in my vision, I can see some steam coming out from underneath the tortilla, and I don't want to smell burning. I just want to smell cooking. I can even check this now if I want to, and if I see a little dark ring, and I do, around the edges, then it's time to flip. And what's going to happen is the second time I flip it over, I should see it kind of poof up like a pillow. Might be time for our second flip. I might have flipped him a little bit too early, but let's see. Oh, there he goes. He's starting to puff up on one side. Now, sometimes they won't poof up all the way around, and that's okay, because I can see steam escaping. I can kind of smell and hear a little bit of popping, and there's a lot of smoke. So it's time to flip. It's okay to have these little burny bits. That's actually really nice. It gives it a nice flavor. We just don't want to go any further than that, which is why I look for steam and smoke coming out from the underside, and that's how I know when it's time to flip. And it looks like that tortilla is just so close to done. He looks pretty done, so now we can put him on the plate with the others. And here we have our finished corn tortillas. They would be ready just like this, soft, to fill with your favorite taco fillings. Or you could experiment with safety at home first and mom and dad. If you fry these in oil, they become crispy. That's actually how they make tortilla chips like Doritos. And you could give that a shot as well for some delicious crunchy tacos. Enjoy!